what could be happening in the future related to the sports card market becoming more and more in the gambling space, especially as Fanatics kind of takes over their monopoly of the sports card world. Let's discuss this. This is an interesting topic. Here in the US, sports gambling has become a massive cultural thing. You know, I think it's always been around, but it's oftentimes been this niche little thing. But more recently, in most states, sports gambling has become legal. There's still some states where it's illegal, but generally it's much more allowed now than it used to be. And in that process, there's also been a lot of sponsorships coming from gambling platforms. I mean, if you watch YouTube sports channels, you will see like sponsored videos by DraftKings and on other gambling platforms again and again. Oversaturating sports with gambling, I feel, is a horrifically bad idea. And the sports leagues themselves are partnering with gambling platforms all over the place. They're probably making a ton of money from it. I'm sure they are, because gambling always works out in favor of the casino. I mean, I lived in Macau for a number of years, and it's no coincidence that the economy, like the amount of money those casinos make, is extremely high. It's because everybody's losing their money. Like, people generally lose money when they're going into the gambling space. I think the reason some people think that in sports gambling they'd rather go there than just a casino is because at least this has some knowledge requirement. I mean, in a casino and you're pulling a slot machine, it's just totally random chance. Whereas in sports betting, there is knowledge that can help you make wiser decisions. It's an addictive thing also. People have addiction problems with gambling. You can see that. It's a reality. And the fact that these different, the sports leagues are partnering with these kinds of companies, the fact that that's actually being supported and promoted is gross to me. I think it's gross. And I worry that in the sports card space, this is becoming more and more of the way that people have been thinking about sports cards as well. I mean, maybe to a certain degree, like ripping wax has a gambling aspect to it. Innately, the dopamine that's fed into your brain at that moment is maybe the same dopamine that comes from gambling. So there's really clear links and similarities between gambling and ripping wax. But at the same time, I feel like, like for me, for example, when I was a kid, I loved that feeling of opening the wax and not knowing what was in there and finding it. But at the same time, I was happy whatever it was. Like, I certainly wanted to find that big Chase card or to find that Michael Jordan card or whatever it was. But at the same time, I enjoyed basketball so much that I loved opening those cards. I loved reading the statistics on the back, having, maybe the little paragraph about that player in some way or another, learning about different players in the league, learning about, the 12th man off the bench that I didn't really know about. Now I knew something about him because he had this card that I had just pulled from this pack. Like, at least there was some other elements of it. Nowadays, I feel like a lot of that is lost. People will open the pack, they'll skip through the base cards so quickly and in breaks and stuff. They won't even send the base cards to you unless you like specifically request it. Otherwise, those are just going into like the garbage. Like, that seems so weird to me. Why are you paying money for something that you're going to be throwing away? But I worry that because there's already this kind of like lean towards gambling in the sports card world, that now that the sports betting is becoming so big, and Fanatics is a part of that. I mean, Fanatics has its own gambling platform that is quite large, and they're trying to make it a bigger and bigger thing. And I can't imagine that they are going to keep those spaces separate of their sports gambling and their sports card spaces. I'm sure they're not going to keep them separate. Why would they? The more that they strengthen one, the more it's going to help them financially in the other space, just like, in their other sports related spaces for jerseys and hats. I mean, I'm sure they're going to be trying to integrate all the different elements of their business, because of course they are. It will strengthen each of them for themselves. They're not thinking about the cultural elements or how it's affecting society at large, or, if people are getting addicted to gambling. They're not thinking about those things. They should be, but they're not. It's not the way that business works in the US and most of the world right now. They're just trying to capture as much money as they can and pull in from as many different markets as they can. And if they can use their different market spaces to strengthen each of them, then they're going to do that so that they make more money. That's just the way that business works right now. As Fanatics takes over the licenses in all the major sports, that they're going to consciously and purposefully try to make deeper and deeper connections between sports gambling and sports cards because of the vibrancy of the sports gambling space that Fanatics will try to move sports cards more and more and more towards gambling. And honestly, for me personally, it's part of the reason why, like, I don't really have any interest in getting my kids involved in the hobby, in sports card spaces. A lot of people want to engage in the hobby together with their kids. I don't really have that big of a desire to do that. I mean, if my kids really truly expressed interest, like, I would, walk with them and help them to approach it in a wise way and to not get wrapped up in the gambling aspect, but to help them to see it in different ways. I would help them if they actually expressed interest. I'm not that interested in trying to get them into this space because I'm worried about where it's going. I don't necessarily think it's going into a healthy space when it has, in relation to gamblers aspect. As far as the market value, as far as more people getting involved, as far as a vibrant market, as far as a fun space for me, I'm not worried about it. I'll continue to be involved in this space. I can approach it in my own ways and avoid the elements of it that I don't like, and just engage with it in the ways that I do like. It's not a problem for me individually as an individual person to engage with the hobby that way, but I don't necessarily want to be purposely bringing other people into this space because there's so many unhealthy ways to engage with the hobby. I don't want to necessarily invite people into this space that can have damaging effects. This gamblers aspect of it is maybe the biggest reason I feel that way. I feel like I can see a shift that could be happening on down the road of more and more and more gambling coming into this space. There already is a lot in some spaces, in some ways, in some approaches, in some ways that the businesses engage with it. It is just straight up gambling. I like to engage in the hobby in different ways, and you absolutely can. People can engage with it in all kinds of ways. But as Fanatics is bringing in more people, they're going to be bringing in people with a mindset that's kind of leaning them towards the gamblers aspect of it. People can enter that way and then find their own space. A lot of people will do that, will enter in this gambling kind of way and then realize that they prefer, engaging in the hobby in these ways. But the fact that a lot of people, I think, are going to be drawn into the hobby because of a gambler's kind of aspect. I don't know. I do worry a little bit about what that means in the future of the hobby. I mean, I'm not one to be all doomy and gloomy. I'm never the kind of person who's going to hold so strongly to my opinion that I won't listen to other opinions. I'm not like that at all. I'm very happy. If people disagree with what I'm saying here, I'm fine. I like hearing from people. I like hearing different perspectives and thinking about things in different ways. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. We should all be willing to do that. It's the fact that so many people get tight and attached to their opinion and want to butt heads with people for something like this is ridiculous to me. But this is just kind of where my head's at with this space is. I don't feel comfortable necessarily. It's not comfortable because it's not that I'm personally uncomfortable. It's more like I just don't necessarily like the connections between gambling and sports cards, sports betting and sports cards that I feel are going to become more and more integrated over time. Anyway, I want to hear from you guys in the comments below. What are your thoughts? Do you see and feel the connection between the sports betting kind of craze that's happening and sports cards in general? Do you recognize the connection? Do you see connections there? What do you think Fanatics is going to be doing into the future? Do you think they're going to try to integrate these two spaces into becoming more and more, like one kind of thing more into the future? What's your thoughts about it? So anyway, that's it for this video. See you in the next one. Peace.